Greetings friends, this is Pavel Stelmach with the top news of this day wrapped up for you. And the offensive in Ukraine was led by the American army. It would rely on the support of aviation, which would destroy the enemy's fortifications long before sending infantry. Instead, the Ukrainian military suffers from a lack of aviation, an insufficient number of armored vehicles and artillery weapons, which leads to higher losses on the battlefield, according to American experts. Because there is no magic here. You can have to go through a minefield, so you will suffer a lot of losses. However, the experts claim the Americans would never have fought this way. They would have carpet-bombed entire minefields and lines of trenches long before sending even one soldier there. But the Ukrainians do not have such an opportunity. Experts referring to conversations with the Ukrainian military inform that one of the biggest expectations of Ukraine is to strengthen the aging aviation with modern F-16 aircraft. The Ukrainian army is waiting for the F-16, fully aware of how difficult it will be to master and operate them. The Ukrainian military is also trying to convince the Swedish government to hand over Gripen's aircraft to Ukraine by saying that the Ukrainians will demonstrate the capabilities of the Swedish aircraft in real combat conditions. In order to effectively counterattack and go to the defensive lines that have been carefully prepared and mined by the Russians throughout the year, you need an advantage in artillery. Miroslav Guy, an officer of the armed forces, said at the Voice of America briefing. But currently Russia is superior to Ukraine in the number of military aircraft on the front line and in artillery. According to him, the plans of NATO allies to increase the production of projectiles to 90,000 per month can significantly help the Ukrainian army, because the current capacity, about 118,000 shells per year, is what Ukraine fired in a month and a half during these battles. For comparison, the Russian Federation uses 60,000 rounds of ammunition per day in the most fierce days of the last year, said Guy. Now the debate in Western capitals is mainly about the context of the territory and how much land Ukraine is going to or can return. For Ukraine, according to the experts' observation, it is about how to end this war in such a way as to have strong security for the future, not to be attacked from Russia in another 3 or 5 years or more. And I'm sure, in case of any possibility to attack, Russia will use it. But now, despite all minefields, Ukrainians continue to deoccupy territories. Last week, in the south of Ukraine, armed forces freed almost 11 square kilometers. In general, the advance from the time of the offensive in the south is 9.25 kilometers. The liberated area is almost 180 square kilometers, and every meter, every acre is drenched in blood of our fighters. Thousands of Ukrainians are held in a network of official and unofficial prisons throughout Russia and in the occupied territories, where they are subjected to torture, psychological violence, and slave labor, writes the Associated Press. Referring to a Russian government document found in its possession, dozens of new similar prisons are planned to be built in the country in the future. They allegedly contain both military and civilian persons. In the connection with the cruel treatment of prisoners, the AP indicates a violation of the Geneva Conventions. The agency writes that it conducted dozens of conversations with former Ukrainian prisoners of war and prisoners, with the families of detainees, with Ukrainian intelligence officers, and also analyzed satellite images, documents, letters from the Red Cross, and materials from social networks. AP found out that many people were detained for speaking in the Ukrainian language or for being in the occupied region, and were often detained without the accusing being presented. Others were detained as terrorists, combatants, or persons resisting a special military operation, as the Russian authorities called the invasion of Ukraine. All the former prisoners with whom correspondents spoke told about torture, beatings, and the point of fractures, electric shocks, imitations of strangulation. Many claimed to have witnessed the deaths. The June UN report on the detention of civilians in the context of the Russian invasion also mentioned torture and ill treatment. According to the authors of the UN study, more than 90% of the prisoners told about them. AP also found out that hundreds of detainees were forced to dig trenches and pits for mass burials. In the future, the prisoners serve as bargaining currency in exchange for Russian soldiers, although international law prohibits the exchange of civilians for prisoners of war. the agency notes. It is impossible to determine how many citizens of Ukraine are currently in custody. Russia denies the fact of holding civilians. Kyiv suspects that approximately 10,000 Ukrainian civilians are still being held in Russian prisons. According to human rights activist Vladimir Osechkin, the founder of the Gulagu.net project, which Associated Press refers to, Russia is detaining at least 8,000 civilians. The agency also found out that now there are no less than 63, according to UN data, 125 prisons and their analogues, from new prison buildings to cluttered basements, where Ukrainian citizens are kept in the occupied territories. Russia has routinely sacked commanders since the start of the invasion of Ukraine, but the removal of the 58th Combined Arms Army General Mayor Ivan Popov is notable. He was apparently dismissed for voicing concerns rather than for any alleged poor performance. Ministry of Defense of Great Britain wrote about this on Twitter. In a leaked video intended for his troops, Popov delivered a scathing attack on the Russian Ministry of Defense leadership, whom he accused of hitting us from the rear, viciously beheading the army at the most difficult and intense moment. Direct criticism from subordinates is likely to become an increasing problem for Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff General Gerasimov. Press also writes about the interrogations and detentions of the Russian military. Thus, the American newspaper The Wall Street Journal, citing sources, claims that in the first hours of Yevgeny Prigozhin's rebellion, the security forces detained at least 13 high-ranking Russian military men for interrogations, and another 15 were fired or removed from service. According to Wall Street Journal sources, General Sergei Surovikin is still detained. He is being interrogated in Moscow. However, he has not been charged. According to one of the interlocutors of the newspaper, Surovikin knew about the impending rebellion but did not participate in it. The possible detention and interrogation of Surovikin was previously reported by Moscow Times, the Financial Times, and Bloomberg. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching. Stay updated, subscribe to our UATV channel for more news from Ukraine. Your support is that really matters. Goodbye.